Suzanne, hello, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have Suzanne Davison here today. You are just one of those amazing humans, and I've been so excited to have a conversation with you today. And I'm going to do a very small intro to you and then allow you to kind of go a little bit more into
Okay.
yourself and your story. So I know you as well as a wonderful human, a relationships coach and therapist.
Yeah.
And I know there's a big story kind of behind that, and how that fits into branding is going to take us probably on lots of different paths around um, knowing ourselves, knowing others, building relationships, not just around business, but in our personal life, and actually what that means for success.
Yep.
Because I think it can be so easy to get caught up in business, in marketing, and actually forget ourselves and others as humans, which is ultimately who we sell to and who we are. So over to you. Just give us a little bit more insight
Wow.
into
Okay.
into Suzanne.
Well, thank you for having me. And I think it's important that people understand how we got together in the beginning, which for me was I had a business which had a brand, but it was a brand that was not representative of who I am. It's what I created. So this like a methodology, but I'd got this brand under this. And when I met you and I'm like, doesn't feel right. I doesn't feel like it's a real, shows who I am. And you're like, needs to be a personal brand. That's why. And I'd always been scared to come out as who I am. And that comes from lots of different reasons in terms of, can I do this? Am I good enough? Can I really put myself out there just as me? And I think for me, what you didn't realize at the time was I'd had a massive life-changing journey where I'd gone through divorce. So I'd left an old life and I was kind of in this place of going, I don't know quite who I am or what I'm doing. And then for me, what I realized was my business had just been a way to avoid the unhappy home that I was in. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, what do I want to do with this business? And then it gave me the courage to say, actually, to step out as I am, and you making me have that personal brand, which was actually quite hard because I'd avoided it. But it kind of set me free in my business to just actually learn how to be authentically myself, as a relationship coach and therapist, which I think is always very ironic when you go, I'm a coach, I'm a therapist, I help families, I help relationships, and yet mine was pretty screwed. That took the confidence to come out and say, no, it's time to tell a story and not hide under another brand. So working with you, you allowed me to kind of step out, which is where then all of a sudden it's like everything starts to flow better and you understand your business more. So I think just from a starting point of our relationship, you knew that straight away. And that's why I think you're very good at what you do. And for me, then working with a lot of business owners and people just genuinely in business, we are our business. You are your business. And if you don't know who you are, then how do you know how to go out and talk about your business? So very often now, as in a relationship coach, it can actually be the relationship that we have with ourselves first. So understanding who we are then allows us to go, well, what do we want this brand or our business to represent? Because we are that. And that's what I think people don't understand when you're not a business owner. You are the brand of a corporate company or somebody else's belief system, ethos, values. But when it's yours, and that's why it's so important that everybody is really in alignment with who they are and what's important to them. Because if not, we can build a business for all sorts of reasons, but we won't ever find that real, what I would determine success being, which is that sense of kind of peace and freedom and joy. We're just going to be burnt out, exhausted, and climbing a mountain, and we don't quite know what's at the top of it.
And God, you've touched on so many incredible points there. It's difficult to know which one to start with.
Yes, sorry, that was a starter for 5.
No, but that's exactly how we operate. I think there's a real important piece that you touched on kind of building something that is attached to the outcome that you want. And a lot, I would say almost every business owner I speak with has sort of impact as something that they want, and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so often, and I myself have frequently fallen into this trap as well. You find yourself actually just being caged in a slightly different cage to the one that you thought
Mhm.
you'd escaped.
Mm.
And a lot of that is to do with what you've very sort of like hit the nail on the head about, which is really understanding yourself and why you're doing it, and having that courage to go out authentically as yourself,
Mm.
which on paper makes sense, but the reality of it is so hard to do.
Mm.
So from the perspective of where you help your clients, and some of these are business clients, some of them are on a personal level, to peel back those layers and
Mm.
and have the courage to come out as themselves. How do you even begin doing that? Because it's so
Mm.
hard to do.
I think the first thing for me, and it was when I left my ex-husband, and I said, for me, I'm always about, let's go and find a business coach to work with, not a therapist, because I don't need that. Of course I didn't. Um, so had this session with the business coach, and I was saying to her, right, I need to realign my business. What am I doing? I'm feeling lost. So she just got me to do a values exercise. And I think it's one of the most empowering things anyone's ever got me to do, which is she made me really work out what was important to me, what were my true values. Because I've done a lot of work presenting and speaking in front of business owners, and I'll do the classic, what's most important to you? And they all sit there and they go, my family. And I'm kind of like, that's a bit shit, really, because where do you spend the least amount of time with your family? What do you value more? Actually, your business. But what is it that you're chasing? And when she got me to do this exercise about really looking at my values, it just helped me then to really focus my business in alignment with those, because my personal values should show up in my business. And that's what I do with a lot of so business owners. The first thing I'm going to say to them is, what are your true values? Because I've yet to meet somebody that honestly says money is their number one value when you actually dig deep. But that's often the thing that we're chasing, because it's exactly what you said. They're chasing a sense of freedom. I want to work for myself. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to be able to do what I want when I want to do it. And then eventually they find out is they don't have any of that because they're chasing the wrong thing. If we're constantly chasing the next thing, the next, I don't know, the next deal, the next client, the next money, the next, and I'll always say to somebody, but when do you know you've got there? And very often that's when people go, I actually don't know what I'm chasing. And often, just really going into it now, often the thing that people are chasing is an approval of their worth. If I'm successful, does that finally mean that I can feel that I'm good enough? And when I've done work, and this isn't gender based, but this is just what I've learned with the people that I've worked with. If I work with men and they are really driven, successful, head down, building, 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 I say to them, what are you actually looking for? And often it's their father's approval.
Interesting.
And when they realise actually, and I might never get that, because the father might not be here anymore, or they just realise that that's just not what they're going to get from their father. And it's that realisation that just goes, wow. And they can be a little bit scared to lose that sense of, I need to keep proving myself, because they're scared then that they're going to somehow just settle. But that's when I say to them about, let's take the what I'm chasing out of your business and actually just look at your personal life. I've worked with too many men and women burnt out. They've lost it, all the money they've lost in divorce courts. They've gotten strange relationships with their kids. The children might say, yeah, dad's always working. Yeah, but we know kids need time. This isn't here to do any parent guilt, but it just happens. Is, when you actually really go back to that original question about what's important to you, and people will say to me, it's their family, it's love, it's relationships. And I'm like, but where are you focusing your time there? But because they're busy over here chasing the growth, the success of business, because that's easy validation, that's another X amount of money in the bank, or I've just grown it to the next level, and they're looking for that, we're losing the sight of actually what's important. Because I said most entrepreneurs, if they actually put as their biggest goal a successful relationship, they would have the most amazing relationship. It would be insane because they have that kind of mindset. But because that doesn't give them that need of I've achieved, because it's not a tangible thing like business, we lose sight of it until it's too late.
And what I've also heard happen, and I'd love to hear kind of your experiences of this,
Mm.
is that that goal is achieved. And
Mm.
then because you've been chasing, whatever this goal might be, it might be the number of businesses you've opened, or it might be a revenue goal, whatever it is. It's like the chasing of that, that's going to be when I'm happy.
Mm.
And then achieve that and then realize that maybe you get the moment of euphoria, but it's very short lived. And then there's that emptiness.
Mm.
So what's that about?
That would be that we actually, when we're growing up, right? So everybody, this is just being a human, is we have certain needs. And when they're met positively in a healthy way as a child, we have a deep sense that we're just enough being who we are. So if those needs are met, then you're not going through life, like I said, having to prove yourself. You're not going through life looking for validation outside of you. But when these needs aren't met, we naturally then go, well, I need to go and have them met somewhere else. And I think one of the biggest needs that we get wrong as parents, no one's fault, we just don't know this stuff, is being validated for who we are, not what we've done, not what we've achieved. Sometimes you'll get that, oh my God, you're an amazing footballer and all my validation comes from football. Then I just want to play football all the time. Or it may be, oh, you're really academic. Well done. You got a grade A. Well done. So we only get that need met when we've achieved, rather than it being, Claire, you're just amazing for who you are. You're just enough without having to do anything, just you, and having that real validation that I'm okay just being me. So it isn't something that we get right, because parents are either critical parents and they'll pick up all the things we don't do. They might be the types of parents that say, oh, you've done a really good job, but if you did that, it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a parent that's just not around. And, sometimes, like I said, that can be just as damaging as having a critical parent, because that child's left home. I don't know what they think of me. So we're kind of this confused identity that goes, I don't know if I'm enough, or I have to go and do something to be enough, if that makes sense. So when you've got that, I always say we climb up this mountain and your head's down and you're working hard and, you're busy. It's like, finally, I'm at the top of my mountain. And that's where I work with a lot of people, because they have that realization, bugger, nothing's there. That thing that I thought I was going to feel, it's not. There's emptiness. And that's when people go into what I call the tunnel. And this is known as, in other language, midlife crisis, or probably menopause, depending on what gender you are. But we hit a moment in our life when we actually have to stop and just go, what is it all about? What's it truly about? Not what I thought it was going to be about, because that's not there. That's just empty. So then we do this soul search, and it's a beautiful journey of that self-discovery. And when I take men through this, and actually it's really, really powerful to work with men. I think women, we're used to like just chatting stuff, whereas for guys, it's a lot bigger for them, because they do a lot of this in their own heads. Men aren't ones for sharing their thoughts and their feelings. Hopefully that's changing. But when you actually get a man that's going through this process, trying to discover what is the purpose of his life, what is it, or what have I been searching for? If you've lost a family through divorce, if you don't really spend much time with your kids, or the kids have grown up, or you've got the big car, the big house, everything you ever thought you wanted, and it still doesn't feel enough. That's when men will go into kind of like this depressive place that goes, I'm bloody knackered because I've been doing this work and there's nothing there for me. So that's when they do this going through the tunnel, and it's just self-discovery. It's a beautiful journey, whether it's for a woman or for a man. And then you come out this version of yourself that says, I'm no longer having to search outside of me, because I know me. And I know my worth, and I know that I'm good. So anything I choose to do next is either because I just love doing it, and it can be, there's lots of people that love business. They love the game of business. It may be that they have a purpose-driven business, or it may just be that, their business is feeding a lot of people. And that's their purpose, is they're actually helping a lot of families by having this company. But it all comes from a different place. It comes from a place of, this is just added. I don't need that to validate myself. I know I know who I am. And now everything else just feels that kind of sense of, like I said, peace and fulfillment. But we go through that journey.
But before getting to, because it's it's great to know that some people do eventually reflect and go through that
Mm.
transformation and that journey. It feels like that comes as the result of something happening in life, that whether that's age or divorce or realizing something. And I'm wondering what can be done to prevent that,
Oh,
so
nice.
that somebody doesn't have to get
Nice.
to the point where they've potentially lost something. Because I think for a lot of people that realization comes because maybe they achieve success in business, but the result of that was, and I know we're going to come on to talking about you can have it all, but
Yeah.
they have maybe prioritized one thing with thought of, I my role is, and again, not gender specific, but the provider of the family, I need to focus on that. And perhaps they do achieve that, but as a knock on, they perhaps don't focus on other areas of their life.
Mm.
So the question is, how can that be prevented so that somebody
Mm.
doesn't have to go through that
Mm.
tunnel, but actually
Mm.
can work with the right mindset to begin with?
Perfect. It would be, if whoever's listening to this podcast, please do this exercise, and just sit for a moment and just check in with yourself and just ask yourself the question, what is the thing that is most important to me? And if you come up with the phrase, I just want a happy family, I want to come home and I want to have a happy marriage, or I want to have kids that we have a great time together. And that is 9 times out of 10 what people are searching for. But we don't know how to have that happy family. So we do the thing that we know that we can do, which is provide the money. But I would say, if you're in a relationship with somebody, have a really good conversation that says, what is it that we're trying to achieve as a family? What is it, the experiences that we want to have? What story do we want to give our children, that when they are older and someone says to them, wow, what was it like growing up? That they have an amazing story. They can talk about their mum and dad in a way that you want them to talk about. And this is what I say to parents all the time, in the nice way, we all screw our kids up in some way, right? It's just our job, and it keeps therapists in business. So it's a great business model. So please don't change screwing your kids up. I'll be out of business. But it's going, your story is your story, and we have to learn from it. So if you're going, I don't want to end up in the tunnel, I don't want to have to end up doing this kind of horrible, or receive this horrible pain that makes me wake up, then wake up. Yeah, wake up and go. It isn't about, that there's that, like you said, having it all. But look at, if you're growing as a family, or even if you're single, I think it's great. So if you're single and you're going, actually, I'm just running my own business and I haven't got to think about kids and family yet because you haven't got to that stage. Well, okay, so think about it now, so that when you get to that stage, you're ready for it. If you don't have children yet and you're just, on that stage where you're just a couple, but that's coming in your future, do the work now. Do the work that sits there and says, when we're ready to have a family, how do we want it to look? What do we want our kids to say? What are those family memories that we want to have? Or if you have a family, just sit down with your partner. And I always say it's like having a blank piece of paper that just goes, okay, so you draw your picture of what success looks like. You draw your picture of what success looks like. And that's about having it all: your personal life, your health, your children, your relationship, your business, your hobbies, just a successful life. And if the pictures match, then you're on the right direction. Yeah, because you're both working towards the same goal. But when I speak to couples and I say to them, what are you working towards? They go, I haven't got a clue. Now, we all know, because we're all guilty of it, that when we start a business up, we think that's going to give us the freedom, that business will very quickly control you, and it will control your time, and it will take over. And that's where I'd want to say to people is, just make sure that you're always in control of your business. Even if that's a case of you putting boundaries, your relationship with your business is actually no different really to the relationship with your partner. If you think about your business as a person, and it's right, okay, me and you, we've got to get on with each other, otherwise we could end up falling out. Or you're going to control me and I'm just going to please you. Yeah. So if I'm trying to please everybody, the staff, the clients, and I'm not pleasing myself, then I'll lose myself. Um, so it's that bit that goes, so how do we put in boundaries? It's a bit weird to think about your business as a person, but it is a relationship, because 9 times out of 10, it's actually like a baby. So when I say to people, it's like when you give birth to your business, you've given birth to an idea. So you've created something, which is amazing. And then what happens is, because it feels so precious to you, that's why it takes up all your time and energy, because you've got to kind of nurture it. But you don't want that to be at the cost of your actual family, your actual children. It's really hard.
It's really hard, and I think it's not about, even when you put boundaries in, you can put
Mm,
boundaries in, for example, around time. So you could say,
mm.
I'm gonna make sure I'm home by 5 o'clock. I was actually having this conversation with somebody yesterday, that as a business owner, even if you put the boundaries in on time, you can't stop what's going on in your head. And often you might be present physically. Maybe you're even watching a film with your family together, but you're not actually
Yeah.
there because your mind's thinking about, I don't know, the client, or the numbers, or the invoice that needed to be sent, or whatever it might be. How how can you address that? Because you can put logistical boundaries in, but how do you stop the overthinking and really make sure you're actually present as opposed to just physically being there?
So one thing that I'd say to start with, so if I'm working with a family and we're kind of realigning everything to prevent this pain from coming, is what does everybody need? Now, people that just work for other companies might have the same feelings, but thinking about business only, because you do have to think more, is decompress. Okay, what happens is you leave work, you're rushing, it's 5 o'clock. Oh my God, turn everything off. Dun, 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 I've got to get home to pick the kids up. We don't have time to decompress from the day. We don't have time to switch the lights off. So if you imagine your business as turning all the lights off, so you leave in the building. So top floor, middle floor, bottom floor, then eventually all the lights are off, so it's closed. At that point, you then go home. But what happens is we go home and all the lights are still on. So your brain's going, oh, yeah, I've got to think about this, and this. So sometimes building in a bit of time in between that journey of business and home that just goes, let's just decompress. So like you said, if you're thinking, I've got this, that's cool, then just write it down. Get it out of your brain so that it's somewhere. And obviously having an ADHD brain, half the thing we're trying to do is not forget things. So we try and hold on to it and remember it because we're going, I mustn't forget it. Whereas actually, if you just say to yourself, even for half an hour, when I've logged everything off, turned the phones off, but I just sit for half an hour and I process everything that's happened that day. I write out everything that I don't want to forget, so that when I actually come home, like I said, all the lights are turned off until the next day. So getting things out is really important. So if you don't, so I personally say, I've got guys or women to sit on their drive and say to me, you're not allowed to go in the front door until you've got everything out of your brain that you need to remember, so that when you come in, your mum or your dad or your partner, so that you can be present for them. But like I said, especially people that might work from home, if you're doing stuff from home, it's like, where's the
Where's the
boundary?
boundary?
Yeah. And sometimes we might just work 10 minutes away. And I've just driven an hour and a half to be here. And I'm like, I love a car journey because I never have music on, nothing. I think. And as business owners, we're so busy, we don't set in time to think. And that thinking allows you to process and to perhaps come up with new ways of doing things or looking for solutions to problems. But where we don't schedule in thinking time, everything's just overwhelming. And that's why our brains can't shut down. So alternatively, if you have a really good partner, and you're as a team, I'm always about teams, and part of what you need to help you process everything is to talk it out. Because I said we're all different and we all have different needs. So a way to regulate your nervous system so that it's not all a little bit out of kilter and a little bit stressy because of the day is I need to speak things out to somebody, not for them to sort my problem out, not for them to fix it, but just somebody that I can talk it out with. And as I talk everything out, I'm relaxing, I'm calming down. And if that person can hold a space for you, that just goes, well, that was a bit of a day. Can I do anything to help? Then again, it's getting it out of you, and then you're regulated. So what happens is when you're, if this makes sense, when you're dysregulated because you're all a bit stressy and all a bit, oh my God, that was a heck of a day and I've got so much to do and so much to do and time's precious, that's when you can't relax.
So it's finding the right method for you to
Mm-hmm.
take what's in here out, whether that's verbally or in writing
Mm.
or whatever way
Mm.
works, so that you're not necessarily closing loops because they might be open, but you're almost parking them, and
Absolutely.
you're giving a signal
Yep.
to your nervous system that
Yep.
this is now for tomorrow.
There's just a really nice visualization, and it's one that I learned. And it's, I said, if you just think about the business, when you're shutting down, it's like you just go in and you're just turning the lights off just until tomorrow. And then when you wake up, you're going in and you're unlocking it, you can turn the lights back on again.
Yeah.
But we don't turn it off. And that's why people can't sleep. This is why people drink when they come home, because that's a quick way they think to relax from the day. So, and that's where you want to, like you said, it's learning the strategies that work for you, because we are different. And even if it's just, you just want to sit quietly on your driveway and just stare out of a window and just kind of allow whatever, all thoughts and stuff to happen. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. But if we just literally run from one part of our life to another part of our life, and we're kind of just like, right now I'm here. We've not had that breather.
And actually, something you just said brings me on to a linked topic, because we've covered that we are certain ways and bring things with us because of our upbringing, childhood,
Mm,
environment.
mm.
But there's also a bit of a nature and nurture, and we have inherently different personalities. And I know that you are an expert in this and have developed a personality profiling tool, which really enables you to help um, individuals and relationships
Yeah.
by understanding how they operate, I guess, how they
Mm,
think.
mm.
So I'd love to have you share a little bit more about what that looks like, because it's so important not just to understand ourselves, but to understand those around us, so that we
100%.
can find that compromise in relationships. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I always say our deepest human need is love and connection. Don't care who you are. And you can tell me, no, I don't need that. Yes, you do. And if you don't think you need it, it's because you need to do the work to understand that you do need it. So love and connection, right? Which is just relationships. We are meant to live in relation with each other. But because people are so confusing, and that you can spend most of your life going, God, why would she do that? I can't believe that. Why is he such a so-and-so? I'd never treat him like that. That we don't understand people, because we want people to be like us. And it's really easy, but we don't even really understand ourselves to even know what that looks like. We just get frustrated with people. And I spent years trying to do this. It's really annoying that it didn't work. I tried to change all my family to be what I wanted them to be, and they didn't
Who
change.
knew it wouldn't work?
Do you know what? It's like, literally, I was so frustrated. So that's where it kind of began for me is, I've been a therapist, and I thought I was here to cure the world of anxiety. I thought I was kind of like the next Messiah and saying, you are cured, my child. And then these people would come back and go, no, I still feel anxious. And I'm like, oh God, you're making me look really bad. And then what I started to understand with my own daughter, and this is the bit that's very different from being a therapist coach to being a mum. I can help other people really well, but I can't help my own. And that's why I just thought I'll just tell them off and change them then. So my daughter started to burn out and crash when she was 15. I didn't know what was going on. And my husband was, just not coping with it. And I'm like, what is going on? My whole family is just like crumbling around me. And all I was trying to do was help families. So it's like, this is a bit ironic. And that's when I came into the world of, I feel like, the spectrum. And I had to learn about how we process. So as therapists, you're taught about, trauma and what you might have learned growing up and belief systems, but you don't learn about how we actually take in information. And what I realised was the fact that my daughter irritated so much is just that she was opposite to me, and we just saw the world so differently. So when I learned that she actually was diagnosed with ADHD, and she's definitely on the autistic spectrum, then my other daughter got diagnosed with ADHD, then behold it, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and it's like, oh, okay, this is a little bit different, didn't know this. So I learned about how brains take in information and what the things that we genuinely find challenging in life, not because of how we were brought up, but just simply because of how our brains work. Because as much as I can work with people, to let go of experiences, to learn better belief systems, I'm not a brain surgeon, so I can't remove the brain. Shame, because it'd be really nice if I could. So I learned that. And then I looked at everybody in my family and just thought, wow, we're not getting on, because we really weren't getting on, simply because our needs weren't getting met. So it's just like a really dysregulated family that's just either huffing and puffing, shutting down, walking out, shouting at each other, eggshells, landmines. It was just this little stress bucket. And then unfortunately we went into lockdown, which did not bode well. And then what happened eventually is it all kind of just crashed, and it's like, I can't do this anymore. And it was when I left the home that I could really start to understand why it didn't work. And that's when I started to create the personality system. Now, there's lots of profiling systems out in the world of corporate. It will show you what kind of leader you are, or, what type of job's good for you, which is fine. But it's very complex, and it's only in business. What I started to realize was we needed something at home. Because as good as I might know, okay, you're going to be a great manager, but if you go home and you're not being a great mum, or you're not being a great dad, it's not that you're not a great person, it's you just don't know how to. So I started to formulate this profiling system. So I did it as 4 shapes, because I look at your house as a shape sorter. And if we all have to fit in to one place, but we're different, then we've got to learn how to make those adjustments so that everybody fits. Because if you don't, then you're going to want to leave, or it just becomes so stressful and uncomfortable that it's just kind of like, turns into a battleground. So I started to look at understanding that my daughter she's a slow. So the 4 shapes, I actually think I could get 2, but that's a little bit too simple. But 4 shapes. So we have the hearts, which are the people pleasers. These are very driven by wanting to keep the world happy, and their fear is upsetting somebody. So life is really challenging for them, because their decisions are all based on, does that make you happy? Mm-hmm. And they can lose themselves because they don't like confrontation. They internalize their feelings. So nobody knows how they feel, because they mask. There's some lovely things about them. They're kind and caring and considerate. And we all love a heart because they want to make us happy. But there's some challenges that they have. Then we have our squares, which are the ones that are very driven by wanting everything to be right. And they're a bit of a perfectionist. They don't like change. They're literally driven by, how can I get everything right? So they like the detail and the process. But they're constantly driven with an anxiety of, I might screw up. I can't make a mistake. Well, we all know this world isn't perfect, and we all make mistakes. So for them, that's really hard. Then we have the diamonds, 2 sitting opposite each other, that are sociable, chatty, distracted, struggle with time management, struggle with the organisation because we need it, but we find it hard to do it. So that will come at a cost. And a lot of that is overwhelm. And again, an anxiety, or we don't quite get where we thought we could be because we start and we don't finish things. So it creates a bit of chaos. So again, there are challenges. And then we have our final one, which is the circles. Now, these guys tend to be business owners. They are leaders. They are driven. They are very about winning their results. But these guys lack empathy. They're not bad people. They get a really raw deal, and you can bash things around like, oh, they're narcissistic, they're controlling. But it isn't that. They just are very driven by, what's the problem? How do I fix it and get that result? So they lack an empathy. They lack a frustration with people who are too fluffy, too wordy. It's like very direct communicators. I love working with circles because they're so easy, because they're just blunt and say it as it is.
Yeah.
But what they don't appreciate is how they've made somebody feel. So then you've got these 4 characters, and people that know the profile and different profiling systems. Now, this isn't rocket science, but when you actually apply it into relationships and go deeper, and this is what I had to do when I understood more about our processing, is what do we need? We all have special needs because we're special, yeah? Because we are all unique, we are all individual. And if we don't understand what we need ourselves, how can I ask you to meet it for me? Because I don't know what I'm asking for.
God, and you've touched on something so, I think, so fundamental there, because I think a lot of the time we might re- um, resent other people
Mm,
because they're not
mm.
being who they want us. They're not being who we want them to be, but we don't even put out there what we actually want, and almost expect people to mind read that when we don't even know what we want.
And
And
and that's what I
I think
say.
that's such
And
a
that's what
big
I say.
point.
You always know what your needs are, because when they're met, you're going, oh, that feels really good. Or if they're not being met, you feel irritated, overwhelmed, frustrated. And that's when you start to get angry with someone. It's like, I can't even talk to you. I remember shouting that at my husband, I cannot talk to you. And it's like, well, that's really weird. We're both English. We both understand the same language. Why aren't we
Different
communicating?
languages, yeah.
And that's when I started to realize, he talks in so much detail. And because he was a square, well, he still is a square, he's just not my husband anymore. So that's the thing. And but because he was a square, he would like be going on in detail, in detail, in detail. And my brain is like, oh, what's the point? What are you trying to say to me? So I'd want to shut him down and hurry him up. Then he'd feel frustrated because he hadn't got it all out and probably get angry. Then I'm telling him off for being overreactive and being angry, where actually I just never let him process his thoughts and feelings. So opposites attract, which is really funny. And you can take all of this information. This is what I said. Once you learn it in your family, you just apply it into your business, because people are people wherever they are, but opposites attract. So we tend to go, ooh, you have what I don't have. So a diamond, for example, likes the stability of a square because they're quite grounded. They like that plan and organization. And I say the diamonds are like the helium balloons that just like to float around being creative. And the squares like the lead weight that kind of grounds it. So we like that attraction. Then after a while, we're going, ugh, you're so boring. You're not spontaneous. You talk too much detail, and you try and tell them off. And then the squares are going, gosh, you're so overwhelming. Why can't you just tell me what the plan is? Why do you keep changing your mind all the time? And then we start to change the person. And so in the family dynamics, understanding your children, understanding your partner, then what I said is you're strategically parenting. When I do management training, I'm saying you're going to be a strategic manager, which means you can quickly identify what language you need to speak to your member of staff to get the best out of them. No different is when you learn this for your being a parent, you get the best out of your kids. Because if you remember where we started, which is how do we prevent this tunnel which could be coming, or how do we prevent ourselves just chasing without really understanding what we're looking for, is when that we can be loved and accepted for who we are, not told to change, just told to be beautifully ourselves. Then that's when we can go through life with that deep sense of I'm enough.
And that really comes from that understanding of yourself first, understanding others
Mm,
next, and whether
mm,
it's home or business. And
mm.
what I'm definitely hearing is kind of nailing them both, but
Absolutely.
it's the same concept. It's understanding the two. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to come up with your words, but just before we go on to that, there's just one thing that I wanted to cover, which comes up so frequently, and I'm going to say it tends to come up more for women than men,
Yeah.
although that is changing, and that is this notion of um, we talked a lot about kind of being in the home and having to almost choose. And I think that there's a lot of times where there can be judgment around,
Yep.
if perhaps a woman is very much into her career.
Yep.
Um, and I genuinely hold the belief that you don't have to choose, that you can find the right template for you. That means that you can tick all of the boxes. So I'd love to just get your take on
Mm.
that before we move on to your words.
So this is where mum guilt comes in. And I'm not saying dads can't feel guilty, but because dads are providers, protectors, them going out and doing their job is what we expect of a man. You go hunt gather, we'll nurture and fluff nests. But when that isn't a pink blue thing, or like both of us are sitting here as single mums, so we're actually providing for our kids because there isn't a man to do that. Yeah. So sometimes women aren't in the positions that we're in. So, or a woman will just go, no, I don't want to be, so I say, pink. I want to be able to be a little bit blue. So I'm saying, that's cool. So we're all purple. Yeah, we just mix the two together. But to let go of mum guilt, and I'm really clear about this, is if going to work makes you happy, if going to work makes you feel fulfilled, if going to work actually gives you a break from being a mum and you find yourself when you go to work, if when you go to work you're Claire, and actually for that moment you really enjoy just being Claire, because it's hard being a parent, right? Anyone says to me parenting is easy, I'm like, you're drunk. Yeah, or you're on illegal drugs,
Or you
because
need to be drunk. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, because it is hard, and it's so sometimes it's okay, and I want to give full permission for everybody to be able to do, because I always say, if mum is happy, if mum is fulfilled, that when she comes home, she can then be an awesome mum. Yeah, because trust me, if you need that, and actually, that's just part of your makeup. That's part, you need that mental stimulation. You need to be able to have that sense of, you want to make something a career for yourself. Then if that's what makes you then come home and feel fulfilled, then let go of mum guilt, because what a child needs is a happy mum. A mum that doesn't feel resentful, a mum that doesn't feel like she's lost and has given up on herself. So I do a lot of work with women. As much as I do men, obviously I do a lot of work with women, and, they're going, I don't know me anymore. I've had to be, I've taken, I'm just saying, for example, I've taken that pink role and I'm at home and I'm looking after the kids, and that's fine. But what about me? Yeah. So
Or the opposite, where
yeah,
women do focus on their careers, and then either the mum guilt comes in,
yeah,
or the societal judgment can sometimes come in as well of, oh, how come you're not doing the pickup every day? How come dad's doing it? So I think that can then create a guilt that comes from a separate place, because there's judgment
100%.
in
No,
place.
100%. Like I said, my biggest piece of advice I can give is don't give a crap about what other people think. That's it. Do what's right for you. Everybody's different. And this is what I said. And we're not in the clear roles anymore of the old days of pink and blue. Everyone knew their roles. Women just knew as soon as they were mums, that was it. That was their job, and that
Mm.
was fine. It was very simple. But that isn't society now. We are purple for all sorts of reasons. But actually, find what is right for your family. Children are great as long as when they have their parents, they have quality time. It's not quantity, it's quality. And that quality time is, I'm present, I'm with you, I'm listening, I understand you. It doesn't have to be that, I'm with you all the time and I'm fed up and I'm miserable and, I'm shouting at you because life's a bit, sucks, whatever. So this is what I'd like to say is just have everyone have a breather. So I said, just get off the train. We're all hurtling through life, 100 miles an hour. Get off the train, grab yourself a coffee and a pad, and just have a moment that just goes, what am I doing this for? What is this all about? And actually for me, I've got a very purpose-driven business. So for me, my work's of high value to me. So are my kids. And it's not competition. Who do I value more? It's now looking at how do I have it all, which is I have to put in boundaries. I used to take messages from people at 11 o'clock at night because I did think I was saving everybody. Then I realized that's kind of not my job. And then I wouldn't be there for my kids and my husband. But whereas now my phone goes off and I'll message you in the morning. So when I come home, I'm with my kids. Quality time. Admittedly, mine are older, and I appreciate it's all different stages of motherhood and fatherhood. But just have a coffee and get a bit of paper and just write out, why am I doing this? What are my values? What do I really appreciate? And am I in alignment? Because when you are not in alignment with your values, you will never feel peaceful. You'll always feel chaotic because you're not being true to you. And that will look different to everybody.
I think that is the perfect kind of mixology message, because there isn't a template that is right for all. It is about finding the cocktail that is right for
There you
you,
go.
and you might not get it right first time. First time you make the cocktail, the blend might be wrong. You need to mix up different ingredients or different amounts of each ingredient, and actually that brings us beautifully into the final section of the show, which is where you share with us what you consider to be your top ingredient for success, and also the thing that you want to put on ice to get people to stop doing.
Okay, so
And I'll get you to write them down if that's
yeah,
okay.
of course it is. Don't check my spelling because I'm also dyslexic. No judgment here.
There's no judgment
I actually
here.
don't care anyhow because I've lost that. So I'm only joking. So my word that I want to put in that I'd love everyone to have is find balance.
Balance.
And that balance is just saying, don't forget you in all of this either. It isn't just about you. It isn't just about your family or your business. It's about you. You're in the middle. Every day you go to your business and you come home and you're a mum or a dad. If you don't look after you, your health, what makes you laugh, your hobbies, then we get lost. So balance in everything. And then most definitely the thing that I want to put on ice is approval. I have worked with way too many that look at their idea of success as an approval of who they are. They're looking to prove themselves. And I say to everybody, you have nothing to prove. Nothing to prove.
Especially to others.
Exactly. And then all you ever need to do is sit quietly and approve yourself. Yeah. So perhaps that's external approval if I had to get specific.
Yeah. I love that. And we could, and I know we're going to continue this conversation over lunch, but there is just so much wisdom, Suzanne, and we've literally just covered like the ice, the top, the very, very tip of the iceberg in terms of this. But I just hope that there's things that people can take away around balance, around being themselves,
and learning about
around
themselves.
understanding what we want, and making that heard to others, but equally understanding others as well. And that's at home and the business, because as you said, we're all humans, and home, business, or in the pub, we are still who we are. So,
absolutely. So if you're not sure, do the quiz.
So if you're not sure, do the quiz, which I will make sure that I link to the bottom of the show notes.
Perfect, thank you.
And also obviously your website, so that if anybody does want to, either from a business or relationship perspective, that they're all intertwined, as we've learned. I cannot recommend working with you enough, because you are amazing. So thank you for being here today, and for driving an hour and a half to be here.
And I've loved it. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. If it resonated with you, feel free to share it with somebody who might appreciate it too. And of course, as always, liking and subscribing really helps the podcast to grow. It means we can reach even more people. Really look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And until then, let's keep mixing it up and keep building a brand and life we actually want.